In the dense wilderness of an alien planet, a group of explorers from Earth stumbled upon something unexpected. The planet was covered in thick forests, with towering trees that blocked out much of the sunlight. Strange creatures roamed freely, their calls echoing through the humid air. This was a world unlike anything the team had ever seen before, and they were eager to explore it. The team consisted of 4 members: Daniel Carter, the leader; Rachel Monroe, the biologist; Ethan Hayes, the engineer; and Laura Bennett, the communications specialist. They had been sent on a mission to study the planet's ecosystem and determine if it could support human life in the future. For days they had trekked through the jungle, gathering samples and setting up temporary camps along the way. On this particular day, they decided to set up camp near a wide river. The water flowed gently, reflecting the dim light that filtered through the canopy above. It was a peaceful spot, perfect for resting after hours of walking. As they unpacked their gear, Rachel noticed movement in the tall grass not far from where they stood. At first she thought it might be one of the smaller animals they had seen earlier, perhaps a rodent or a bird-like creature. But then she saw something larger. "There's something over there," Rachel whispered, pointing toward the grass. Her voice was soft but tense, enough to grab everyone's attention. The others turned to look, their hands instinctively reaching for their weapons. On an alien planet, caution was always necessary. The grass rustled again, and then a shape emerged. It was a predator, a large feline-like creature with sleek fur and sharp claws that glinted in the faint light. Its eyes glowed like embers, scanning the area with intense focus. The animal looked wounded, its movements slow and labored. Blood streaked its side, evidence of a recent fight or injury. But what truly surprised the team wasn't the sight of the predator itself. It was the figure kneeling beside it. A human. He was crouched low, feeding strips of meat to the beast. His hands moved carefully, avoiding the creature's sharp teeth. The predator didn't attack or resist. Instead, it leaned closer, almost as if it trusted the man completely. "Who is that?" Rachel asked, her voice trembling slightly. None of them recognized the man. He wore tattered clothing, clearly worn down by time and hardship. His face was weathered, with dirt smudged across his cheeks and forehead. His hair was long and unkempt, falling messily around his shoulders. Despite his rough appearance, there was something calm about him, as though he had been living here for years. Daniel signaled for the team to stay quiet. They watched silently as the man continued to tend to the wounded animal. He spoke softly, though his words were too faint to hear from a distance. The predator responded by nuzzling against his hand, a gesture that seemed strangely affectionate given its fearsome nature. Laura adjusted the settings on her camera, capturing footage of the scene. "This is incredible," she murmured under her breath. "We need to document this." Ethan frowned, gripping his weapon tightly. "I don't like this," he said quietly. "That thing could tear us apart in seconds. Why isn't it attacking him?" Rachel shook her head, her eyes wide with fascination. "It's like they know each other. Look at how close they are. That level of trust. It's unheard of." Daniel nodded, slowly, his expression thoughtful. "We should approach cautiously. If he's been surviving out here alone, he might have valuable information about the planet." Taking a deep breath, Daniel stepped forward, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "Hello," he called out, keeping his voice steady. "We're explorers from Earth. We mean you no harm." The man froze, his head snapping up sharply. For a moment, he stared at them, his eyes narrowing suspiciously. Then, slowly, he rose to his feet, placing himself between the team and the predator. His stance was protective, his body tense and ready to act if needed. "Stay back," the man warned, his voice low and gravelly. "You don't want to come any closer." "We're not here to hurt you or your friend," Daniel replied calmly. "We just want to talk." The man hesitated, glancing down at the predator beside him. The creature let out a low growl, its glowing eyes fixed on the newcomers. But the man placed a reassuring hand on its head and the growling stopped. After a long pause, the man finally spoke. "My name is Alex Harper," he said, "and this is Shadow. What do you want?" Daniel introduced himself and the rest of the team, explaining their mission to study the planet. Alex listened intently, his expression unreadable. When Daniel finished speaking, Alex sighed deeply, running a hand through his tangled hair. "I've been here for years," Alex admitted. "Crash-landed during a failed expedition. I thought I was going to die out here." He glanced at Shadow, who was lying down now, watching the exchange with wary eyes. "Then I met him. Or rather, he tried to eat me. But eventually, we figured things out." "You mean you tamed it?" Ethan asked skeptically. Alex chuckled dryly. "Tamed? No. Shadow isn't tame. We just understand each other. I feed him and he keeps me alive. Simple as that." Rachel took a step closer, her curiosity getting the better of her. "How did you build that kind of trust? Most predators would see humans as prey." Alex shrugged. "It wasn't easy. There were plenty of times when I thought he'd kill me. But we both needed each other to survive. Over time, we learned to rely on one another." As Alex spoke, the team couldn't help but notice the scars on his arms and face, marks left by Shadow's claws during those early encounters. Yet despite the obvious dangers, Alex showed no fear. In fact, he seemed almost proud of the bond he had formed with the creature. Laura lowered her camera, feeling a mix of awe and unease. "So it's not mercy," she said softly. "You're helping each other." Alex nodded. "Exactly. Out here, you can't afford to be sentimental. Survival is all that matters." The team exchanged glances, unsure of what to make of the situation. On one hand, Alex's story was fascinating, an example of interspecies cooperation that defied logic. On the other hand, the presence of such a dangerous predator made them nervous. Could they really trust Alex? And more importantly, could they trust Shadow? For now, all they could do was observe. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the landscape. The air grew cooler and the sounds of the jungle became louder as nocturnal creatures began to stir. Alex returned to Shadow's side, continuing to tend to the animal's wounds. As the team settled into their camp for the night, they couldn't stop thinking about what they had witnessed. The image of a lone human feeding a wounded predator stayed with them, haunting and inspiring at the same time. Little did they know this encounter would change everything, for better or worse. The next morning, the team woke up to find Alex already awake, sitting by the riverbank with Shadow resting nearby. The predator's wounds looked slightly better, though it was still weak and unable to move quickly. Alex had cleaned the area around the injury using water from the river, and he was now carefully wrapping it with strips of cloth torn from his own shirt. His movements were slow and deliberate, as if he knew any sudden action might startle Shadow. Daniel approached cautiously, making sure to keep a safe distance. "Alex," he said softly, not wanting to alarm either the man or the predator. "We need to talk." Alex glanced up briefly but didn't stop what he was doing. "About what?" he asked, his tone neutral. "About you and Shadow," Daniel replied. "How did you two end up like this? You said you've been here for years. What happened?" Alex sighed, tying off the makeshift bandage before turning to face Daniel. He seemed reluctant to share his story, but after a moment, he nodded. "Fine, but don't expect anything dramatic. It's just survival." He began speaking slowly, his voice steady, but tinged with weariness. After his ship crashed on the planet, Alex found himself stranded with no way to call for help. At first, he tried to stay near the wreckage, hoping someone would come looking for him. But days turned into weeks and no rescue came. With limited supplies and no shelter, Alex realized he had to adapt, or die. "I wandered deeper into the jungle," Alex explained. "That's when I ran into Shadow, or rather he ran into me." He chuckled bitterly, pointing to the scars on his arms. "He wasn't exactly friendly at first, tried to take a chunk out of me more than once. But eventually we reached an understanding." Rachel knelt down a few feet away, listening intently. "What kind of understanding?" she asked. Alex shrugged. I gave him food, meat from the animals I hunted. In return, he stopped trying to kill me. Over time, we started working together. When I needed protection, he'd scare off other predators. And when he got hurt, I took care of him. Ethan, who had been standing quietly behind the group, frowned. But why would you risk your life for something that could easily kill you? Why not just leave it alone? Alex's expression hardened. Because I didn't have a choice. Out here it's kill or be killed. Shadow made me stronger. Without him, I wouldn't have lasted this long. Laura stepped forward, holding her camera. Do you think Shadow feels loyalty toward you? Or is it just instinct? Alex paused, considering the question. Then he looked at Shadow, who was watching them lazily, its glowing eyes half closed. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe it's instinct. Maybe it's something else. All I know is that we depend on each other. That's enough for me. As the conversation continued, Rachel noticed something peculiar about Alex's demeanor. Despite his rough appearance and harsh words, there was a gentleness in the way he interacted with Shadow. Every movement was calculated, designed to avoid startling the animal. Even when Shadow growled softly at Ethan moving too close, Alex simply placed a calming hand on the creature's back and the tension eased immediately. This is incredible, Rachel whispered to Daniel later, while Alex tended to Shadow again. It's like they've formed a bond beyond survival. There's trust here, real trust. Daniel nodded, though his brow remained furrowed. It's fascinating. Yes, but it's also dangerous. We can't forget what Shadow is, a wild predator. One wrong move and things could go very badly. By midday, the team decided to break camp and continue their exploration of the area. They invited Alex to join them, offering to share their supplies and equipment. At first, Alex hesitated, clearly unsure whether to trust these strangers. But after some persuasion, he agreed, on one condition. Shadow came with him. We stick together, Alex said firmly. No exceptions. The team reluctantly accepted, though Ethan voiced his concerns loudly. Are you serious? Bringing that thing along is a disaster waiting to happen. He's right, Laura added nervously. What if it attacks us? Alex crossed his arms, his expression unyielding. Shadow won't attack unless provoked. And as long as I'm around, he'll listen to me. Seeing no other option, Daniel gave the order to proceed. As they moved through the jungle, Shadow stayed close to Alex, its powerful muscles rippling beneath its sleek fur. The predator's presence was intimidating, and the team couldn't help but feel uneasy. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves made them flinch, imagining Shadow lunging at them at any moment. Despite the tension, the journey proved insightful. Alex demonstrated an intimate knowledge of the terrain, guiding the team through shortcuts and avoiding areas he knew to be dangerous. He pointed out edible plants, explained which animals were safe to hunt, and warned them about certain predators that roamed the region. His expertise was invaluable, and the team quickly realized how much they stood to gain from having him as a guide. At one point, they encountered a pack of smaller wolf-like creatures skulking in the shadows. The animals were aggressive, baring their teeth and circling the group. Ethan raised his weapon, ready to defend himself, but Alex held up a hand, signaling for him to wait. Let Shadow handle it, Alex said calmly. Before anyone could protest, Shadow let out a deep, guttural roar that echoed through the trees. The sound was primal and terrifying, sending shivers down everyone's spines. The wolf-like creatures froze, their ears flattening against their heads. After a tense moment, they slunk away, disappearing into the underbrush. That was amazing, Rachel breathed, staring at Shadow in awe. He didn't even have to fight them. Alex smirked faintly. Sometimes, all it takes is a show of strength. As the day wore on, the team began to see Alex and Shadow in a new light. Their relationship wasn't just about survival. It was a partnership built on mutual respect and necessity. Alex relied on Shadow for protection, while Shadow depended on Alex for food and care. Together, they were a force to be reckoned with. But questions still lingered in the minds of the team. How far did this bond extend? Could it withstand the challenges of living among humans? And most importantly, what would happen if the balance shifted, if Shadow decided Alex was no longer useful? For now, however, the arrangement worked. By evening, the group set up another camp near a rocky outcrop. Alex busied himself gathering firewood while Shadow lay nearby, keeping watch. The Predator's presence was both comforting and unnerving. It reminded the team that they were safe, for now, but also that danger lurked just beneath the surface. Rachel sat beside Alex as he prepared dinner over the fire. She watched him carefully, noting the way his hands moved with practiced ease. "Do you ever miss Earth?" she asked suddenly. Alex paused, poking at the flames with a stick. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But Earth feels like a distant memory now. This place, it becomes home after a while." "And Shadow?" Rachel pressed gently. "Do you think you'd ever leave him behind?" Alex's gaze flickered to the Predator lying a few feet away. For a brief moment, his expression softened. "No," he said quietly. "Not unless I had to." Rachel nodded, sensing that the topic was sensitive. She didn't push further, instead letting the crackling of the fire fill the silence. Night fell. The jungle came alive with sounds, chirps, hoots, and distant roars. The team huddled close to the fire, finding comfort in its warmth and light. Shadow prowled around the perimeter of the camp, his glowing eyes scanning the darkness. Occasionally, he would let out a low growl, warning unseen threats to stay away. "Watching the Predator," Ethan muttered under his breath. "This whole situation is insane. A human and a beast like that, it shouldn't work." "But it does," Rachel countered, her voice firm. "And that's what makes it so remarkable." Daniel leaned back against a rock, his thoughts swirling. He couldn't deny the value Alex brought to the team, nor could he ignore the risks involved in keeping Shadow around. Yet deep down he felt a sense of admiration for the pair. They had defied the odds, surviving in a hostile environment where others would have perished. Unbeknownst to the team, this was only the beginning of their journey with Alex and Shadow. Little did they know, the bond between man and Predator would soon be tested in ways none of them could have anticipated. By the third day of traveling together, the team had fallen into a fragile rhythm. Alex led the way, his instincts honed by years of surviving in the alien wilderness. Shadow followed closely, always alert and ready to react to any threat. The Predator's presence kept smaller creatures at bay, but it also made the team uneasy. They couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking alongside a ticking time bomb. At night, tensions ran high. The campfire provided some comfort, but the shadows beyond its glow felt heavier with Shadow prowling nearby. Ethan often volunteered for the first watch, claiming he couldn't sleep anyway, though everyone knew it was because he didn't trust the Predator. Laura tried to lighten the mood by sharing stories from her past missions, but even her cheerful voice couldn't fully dispel the unease. Rachel, however, remained fascinated. She spent hours observing Alex and Shadow, jotting notes in her journal and occasionally snapping photos. One evening, she asked Alex a question that had been on her mind since they met. "Do you ever worry about Shadow turning on you? I mean, he's still a wild animal." Alex glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Every day," he admitted. "But fear doesn't keep me alive out here. Understanding does. Shadow knows I'm no threat to him unless I have to be. And I know he'll protect me as long as it benefits him." Rachel nodded thoughtfully. "It's like you're speaking the same language, even though you're completely different." "Maybe we are," Alex said with a faint smile. "Or maybe survival just makes strange bedfellows." Despite Alex's reassurances, doubts lingered among the team. Daniel noticed how Ethan's hand hovered near his weapon whenever Shadow came too close. Laura avoided making eye contact with the Predator altogether, focusing instead on adjusting her equipment or reviewing data logs. Even Rachel, who seemed the most accepting of Alex and Shadow, couldn't hide the nervous glances she cast in their direction. One afternoon, those doubts came to a head. The group was crossing a narrow ravine when Shadow suddenly froze, his ears twitching. A low growl rumbled in his throat, and Alex immediately stopped moving. "Something's wrong," he muttered, scanning the area. What is it? Daniel asked, gripping his rifle tightly. Predators, Alex replied. Big ones, stay close. Before anyone could respond, a loud roar echoed through the ravine. From the thick foliage above them, massive shapes emerged, creatures larger than Shadow with jagged teeth and armored hides. They moved swiftly, surrounding the group within seconds. Panic set in. Ethan raised his weapon, firing blindly at the nearest creature. The shot hit its mark, causing the beast to stumble, but two more took its place. Laura screamed, backing away until she tripped over a rock. Rachel crouched low, clutching her bag as if it could shield her. Amidst the chaos, Alex stood his ground, shouting commands. Stay behind me, he yelled, positioning himself between the team and the attackers. Shadow let out a deafening roar, leaping forward to meet the largest predator head-on. The clash was brutal, teeth and claws flashing in the dim light. Daniel joined the fight, aiming carefully and taking down one of the creatures, but there were too many of them, and the team quickly realized they were outnumbered. Just as hope began to fade, something unexpected happened. Shadow didn't retreat. Instead, he fought with relentless ferocity, driving the predators back step by step. Inspired by the predator's courage, Alex grabbed a fallen branch and charged into the fray, swinging it like a club. Together, man and beast created a barrier. The other creatures couldn't penetrate. Slowly but surely, the attackers retreated, disappearing into the jungle as quickly as they had appeared. When the dust settled, the team was left panting and shaken. Laura sat on the ground, trembling as she hugged her knees. Ethan leaned against a tree, his face pale. Rachel clutched her notebook, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the pen. You saved us, Daniel said, looking at Alex and Shadow, with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Both of you? Alex wiped blood from a cut on his cheek, his breathing heavy. We protect what's ours, he said simply. Shadow limped back to his side, favoring one leg but otherwise unharmed. Alex knelt to examine the injury, murmuring softly to the predator. The attack changed the dynamic of the group. No longer did anyone question the bond between Alex and Shadow. It wasn't just survival, it was partnership, forged in the heat of battle. Shadow's loyalty to Alex was undeniable, and Alex's willingness to put himself in harm's way for the team proved he wasn't just a lone survivor. He was someone who understood the value of working together. That night, as they set up camp in a safer location, the atmosphere was different. Ethan didn't volunteer for the first watch this time. Instead, he sat quietly by the fire, watching Shadow patrol the perimeter. Laura worked on repairing a damaged piece of equipment, her movement steadier now. Rachel approached Alex, who was tending to Shadow's injured leg. How do you do it? She asked, sitting beside him. How do you stay calm when everything around you's falling apart? Alex paused, considering the question. You don't think about the fear, he said finally. You focus on what needs to be done. Fear will kill you faster than anything else out here. Rachel nodded, absorbing his words. Do you ever wish things were different? That you weren't stuck here? Alex chuckled dryly. Some days, yeah. But wishing doesn't change anything. This is my life now. Shadow's life too. We make the best of it. As the fire crackled and the jungle hummed with nocturnal sounds, Daniel reflected on the events of the day. He had always prided himself on being a leader, someone who could guide his team through any challenge. Yet today, it was Alex who had taken charge, proving that strength wasn't just about weapons or training. It was about trust and determination. Still, questions lingered in Daniel's mind. How much longer could Alex and Shadow keep going like this? The predator's injuries were adding up, and Alex looked thinner than when they first met him. Survival took its toll, and Daniel wondered if the pair would reach their breaking point, sooner rather than later. Unbeknownst to the team, that breaking point was closer than they realized. Over the next few days, Shadow grew weaker. His movements became slower, and his once bright eyes lost some of their intensity. Alex noticed, of course, but he refused to acknowledge it. He fed Shadow more frequently, offering the choicest cuts of meat. But the predator's appetite waned. Rachel confronted Alex one evening while the others rested. You need to let me check Shadow's wounds, she said firmly. If they're infected, we can help. Alex shook his head, his jaw tightening. He's fine, he insisted, just tired. He's not fine, Rachel countered. I've seen animals like this before. Without treatment, he won't last much longer. For a moment, Alex looked torn. Then he sighed, running a hand through his hair. Fine, he said reluctantly. But if anything happens to him, it's on you. Rachel nodded, understanding the weight of his words. With Daniel's help, she gathered medical supplies and approached Shadow cautiously. The predator growled low, in warning, but Alex placed a reassuring hand on its head, murmuring softly. Slowly, Shadow relaxed, allowing Rachel to examine the wound. The injury was worse than she had feared. Infection had set in, spreading red streaks across the surrounding skin. Rachel cleaned the area as gently as possible, applying antibiotics salvaged from their limited stock. Shadow flinched but didn't resist, his trust in Alex evident even in his weakened state. As Rachel worked, Alex watched silently, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he thanked her gruffly, though his gratitude was clear. He's strong, Alex said, almost as if convincing himself. He'll pull through. Rachel wanted to believe him, but she knew the odds weren't good. Shadow's condition would require constant care, and their resources were dwindling. For now, all they could do was wait and hope. The team continued their journey, but the mood had shifted. There was a heaviness in the air, a shared awareness. That time was running out, not just for Shadow, but for all of them. Each step forward felt like a gamble, every decision fraught with uncertainty. Yet amidst the tension, there were moments of quiet camaraderie. Laura began teaching Alex how to use some of their advanced technology, marveling at how quickly he adapted. Rachel shared stories of Earth, describing places Alex hadn't seen in years. Even Ethan softened slightly, offering to carry extra supplies so Alex wouldn't tire himself out. Through it all, Shadow remained a constant presence, his loyalty unwavering despite his declining health. He stayed by Alex's side, guarding him fiercely even as his own strength faded. The team couldn't help but admire the predator's resilience, even as they braced themselves for the inevitable. Little did they know, the challenges ahead would test them in ways they couldn't imagine. The bond between Alex and Shadow was about to face its greatest trial, one that would force everyone to confront their deepest fears and desires. The days that followed were tense and uncertain. Shadow's condition continued to worsen, and Alex grew quieter with each passing hour. He spent most of his time by the predator's side, feeding him small bites of meat and speaking in low tones. The once fierce creature now lay still, its glowing eyes dimmed and its movements sluggish. It was clear to everyone that Shadow was fighting a losing battle. Rachel tried her best to help, checking the wound daily and applying fresh bandages. But without proper medical equipment or more antibiotics, there was only so much she could do. Each time she examined Shadow, she noticed new signs of deterioration: feverish heat radiating from his body, labored breathing, and an increasing reluctance to move. She didn't say it aloud, but she knew the predator might not survive much longer. Ethan, who had always been wary of Shadow, began voicing his concerns more openly. "This is pointless," he muttered one evening as the team gathered around the campfire. "That thing is dying. We should focus on our mission before it drags us down too." Alex shot him a sharp glare, his fists clenched tightly. "You don't get to decide what happens to him," he snapped. "Shadow's done more for me than anyone else ever has. If you don't like it, stay out of my way." The tension between Alex and Ethan had been building for days, and this argument brought it to a boiling point. Daniel stepped in quickly, trying to diffuse the situation. "We're all stressed," he said calmly. "Let's not turn on each other. We need to figure out how to move forward, together." But moving forward wasn't easy. The team was divided, their opinions clashing over what to do next. Laura sided with Rachel, believing they owed it to Alex and Shadow to try everything possible to save the predator. Ethan, on the other hand, argued that they couldn't afford to waste resources on an animal when their own survival was at stake. Daniel found himself caught in the middle, torn between practicality and compassion. Amidst the arguments, Alex remained resolute. He refused to leave Shadow's side, even when it meant falling behind during hikes or skipping meals. His dedication was admirable, but it also worried the team. They saw how much Alex relied on Shadow, not just for protection, but for companionship. Without him, Alex might lose the will to keep going. One morning, as the group prepared to set out, Shadow struggled to stand. His legs trembled under his weight, and after a few moments he collapsed back onto the ground. Alex knelt beside him, stroking his fur gently. "Come on, buddy," he whispered. "You can do it." Shadow let out a weak growl, lifting his head slightly before letting it drop again. For the first time since they'd met him, Alex looked truly defeated. His shoulders slumped and his voice cracked as he spoke. "I promised I'd take care of you," he said softly. "I can't break that promise." Rachel approached cautiously, placing a hand on Alex's shoulder. "You haven't broken it," she said. "You've done everything you can. Sometimes we have to accept that we can't fix everything." Alex shook his head, brushing her hand away. "No. If Shadow dies, then so do I. Out here, there's no point without him." His words sent a chill through the group. None of them doubted that Alex meant what he said. Survival on this planet wasn't just about physical strength, it was about having something, or someone, to fight for. Without Shadow, Alex would be alone again, facing the harsh wilderness with nothing but memories of their bond. Determined to find a solution, Rachel convinced Daniel to let her search for medicinal plants native to the planet. She remembered reading about certain species that contained natural antibacterial properties, and though it was a long shot, it was worth a try. With Ethan reluctantly agreeing to accompany her, Rachel ventured into the jungle, collecting samples and testing them against smaller cuts on her own skin to ensure they were safe. Meanwhile, back at camp, Alex stayed close to Shadow, talking to him as if the predator could understand every word. "You remember that first day?" Alex asked, his voice soft. "When you almost took my arm off, you were so angry back then, but look at us now. We made it work, didn't we?" Shadow's tail flicked weakly, as if in response. Alex smiled faintly, though his eyes glistened with unshed tears. "We'll make it through this too. Just hang on, okay?" As the hours passed, the rest of the team grew increasingly restless. Ethan paced back and forth, muttering about wasted time, while Laura sat quietly sketching Shadow in her notebook. Daniel kept watch over the perimeter, his mind racing with thoughts of what might happen if Shadow didn't recover. Would Alex stay behind? Or would he push forward, carrying the weight of his loss? Finally, Rachel and Ethan returned, their arms filled with bundles of leaves and roots. Rachel immediately began preparing a poultice, grinding the plants into a paste and mixing them with water. When she applied it to Shadow's wound, the predator flinched but didn't resist. Alex watched silently, his expression unreadable. For 2 days, the team waited anxiously, monitoring Shadow's condition. At first, there was no change, and hope began to fade. But on the 3rd day, something miraculous happened. Shadow lifted, his head, his eyes brighter than they had been in weeks. He sniffed the air, then let out a low growl, a sound that was music to Alex's ears. "He's getting better," Rachel said, her voice trembling with relief. "The infection must be clearing up." Alex didn't say anything. He simply hugged Shadow tightly, burying his face in the predator's fur. For the first time in days, the tension in the camp eased. Even Ethan managed a small smile, though he quickly masked it with a cough. With Shadow on the mend, the team resumed their journey, though at a slower pace to accommodate the predator's recovery. The bond between Alex and Shadow seemed stronger than ever, as if the ordeal had deepened their connection. Shadow stayed closer to Alex than usual, rarely straying more than a few feet away. And Alex, in turn, kept a constant eye on the predator, ensuring he didn't overexert himself. But the experience left its mark on everyone. Rachel realized how fragile life was, even in the strongest of creatures. Laura found herself sketching not just Shadow, but Alex as well, capturing the quiet moments of trust and loyalty between them. Ethan, despite his earlier skepticism, admitted privately to Daniel that he had underestimated the power of their partnership. Daniel, meanwhile, reflected on the lessons he had learned. Leadership wasn't just about making decisions. It was about understanding people, and in this case, animals too. Alex and Shadow had taught him that survival wasn't a solo endeavor. It required cooperation, sacrifice, and unwavering faith in those who stood by your side. As the days turned into weeks, the team grew closer, united by their shared experiences. They faced challenges together, navigating treacherous terrain, fending off predators, and enduring harsh weather. But they also celebrated small victories like finding fresh water or spotting edible plants. Through it all, Alex and Shadow remained at the heart of the group, their presence a reminder of resilience and determination. Yet, even as things improved, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was far from over. The planet still held secrets, dangers lurking just beyond the horizon, and though Shadow's recovery had given them hope, Daniel knew they couldn't afford to become complacent. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the jungle in shades of orange and purple, Alex sat by the fire with Shadow, resting nearby. The predator's wounds were healing and his strength was slowly returning. Alex ran a hand along Shadow's back, marveling at how far they had come together. "You're my brother," Alex said softly, his voice barely audible over the crackling flames. "My family. Whatever happens next, we'll face it together." Shadow let out a contented purr, leaning into Alex's touch. It was a simple gesture, yet it spoke volumes about the bond they shared, a bond forged in the crucible of survival, where neither was truly alone anymore. Unbeknownst to the team, their greatest challenge was yet to come. The jungle was vast and unforgiving, and the choices they would soon face would test not only their courage but also the very foundation of their unity. For now, however, they allowed themselves a moment of peace, grateful for the fragile balance they had found. Amidst the chaos, the team continued their journey deeper into the alien jungle, guided by Alex and Shadow's instincts. The predator's recovery had given them renewed energy, but the challenges they faced were far from over. Every step forward brought new dangers, unstable terrain, venomous plants, and predators that seemed to grow bolder with each passing day. Despite these obstacles, the group pressed on, driven by the hope of finding a way off the planet. One afternoon, as they trekked through a dense thicket, Laura noticed something unusual ahead. Through the thick foliage, she could see the faint outline of structures, buildings made of stone and metal, partially overtaken by vines and moss. "Over there," she called out, pointing toward the ruins. "Do you think it's some kind of settlement?" Daniel stepped forward to investigate, his rifle at the ready. "Could be," he said cautiously. "But we need to be careful. Ruins like this might attract scavengers, or worse." Alex nodded in agreement, signaling for Shadow to stay close. The predators' sharp senses would alert them to any threats lurking nearby. As they approached the site, the scale of the ruins became clear. It was an ancient city, long abandoned and reclaimed by nature. Crumbling towers rose above the canopy, their surfaces etched with strange symbols that none of them recognized. Rachel was immediately fascinated. "This is incredible," she whispered, running her fingers over the carvings on a nearby wall. "These markings, they're not human. Whoever built this place must have been highly advanced." Ethan, however, wasn't impressed. "Great. An old ghost town. What are we supposed to do with it? It's not going to help us get home." "We might find something useful," Daniel countered. "Tools, supplies, maybe even clues about the planet's history. Let's split up and search the area carefully." The team divided into pairs. Daniel went with Ethan to scout the outer perimeter, while Rachel and Laura explored the central plaza. Alex stayed behind with Shadow, keeping watch over the entrance to ensure no one snuck up on them. Though he trusted the team more now, he remained cautious, knowing how unpredictable the jungle could be. As Rachel and Laura wandered through the ruins, they discovered remnants of technology scattered among the debris. Some devices were beyond repair, rusted and broken from centuries of neglect. Others, however, still showed signs of functionality. Laura examined a console embedded in the side of a crumbling pillar, her fingers brushing away layers of dirt. "This looks promising," she said excitedly. "If I can get it working, we might be able to access data, maps, maybe even communication logs." Rachel helped her clear away more debris, revealing additional panels and controls. "Be careful," she warned. "We don't know what kind of security systems they might have had. Triggering the wrong thing could bring the whole place down on us." Laura nodded, proceeding slowly. After several minutes of tinkering, she managed to activate the console. A holographic display flickered to life, projecting images and text onto the air above the panel. Much of it was indecipherable, written in the same alien script they'd seen earlier. But one image stood out, a map of the surrounding region, marked with symbols indicating potential resources. "This could be exactly what we need," Laura said, pulling out her camera to document the findings. "If we can decode the rest of this, we might find a way to signal for rescue." Their excitement was short-lived. As they studied the map, a low rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. Dust fell from the ceiling and cracks began to form in the walls around them. "What's happening?" Rachel asked, panic rising in her voice. Before Laura could respond, a loud screech echoed through the ruins. From the shadows emerged a swarm of insect-like creatures, their bodies covered in chitinous armor and their eyes glowing ominously. They moved quickly, skittering across the floor and walls with unnatural speed. "Run!" Rachel shouted, grabbing Laura's arm and pulling her toward the exit. The creatures pursued them relentlessly, their claws clicking against the stone as they closed the distance. Outside, Alex and Shadow heard the commotion and sprang into action. Shadow let out a thunderous roar, charging toward the source of the noise. Alex followed closely, drawing a knife from his belt. When Rachel and Laura burst into the open, the sight before them was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. Shadow tore through the swarm, his massive claws slicing through the creatures with brutal efficiency. Alex fought alongside him, using his blade to fend off any that got too close. Daniel and Ethan arrived moments later, weapons drawn. Together, the team managed to drive the swarm back into the ruins, collapsing part of the entrance to seal them inside. Exhausted and shaken, they regrouped near the edge of the clearing. "That was too close," Ethan muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. "We should have left those ruins alone." "No," Rachel argued. "We found valuable information. If we can figure out how to use it, we might actually stand a chance of getting off this planet." Daniel nodded, siding with Rachel. "She's right. Those risks were worth taking, but next time we need to be smarter about it." For the rest of the day, the team focused on analyzing the data Laura had collected. Using her equipment, she managed to translate parts of the map, identifying key locations such as water sources and mineral deposits. One symbol, however, caught everyone's attention, a cluster of lines forming what appeared to be a beacon or transmitter. "If this is accurate," Laura explained, "there's a functioning communication array somewhere to the north. If we can reach it, we might be able to send a distress signal." The prospect of contacting Earth reignited their determination. They decided to head north immediately, packing up camp and setting out at first light. The journey would take several days, and the path ahead was fraught with unknown dangers, but the promise of rescue gave them the strength to push forward. As they traveled, Alex and Shadow led the way, their bond stronger than ever. Shadow's recovery had given him a second wind, and he prowled confidently beside Alex, his eyes scanning for threats. The team relied heavily on their guidance, trusting Alex's instincts and Shadow's protective presence. Despite the renewed sense of purpose, tensions still simmered beneath the surface. Ethan remained skeptical of relying on Alex and Shadow, often voicing his doubts during breaks. "What happens if that thing turns on us again?" he asked one evening, gesturing toward Shadow. "We're putting a lot of faith in an animal that doesn't understand loyalty." Alex clenched his fists, his patience wearing thin. "Shadow isn't just an animal," he snapped. "He saved all of our lives more times than I can count. If you don't trust him, then fine, but don't insult him. Ethan opened his mouth to retort, but Daniel intervened before the argument escalated. Enough, he said firmly. We don't have time for this. We're a team, whether we like it or not. Start acting like one. The rebuke silenced Ethan, though resentment lingered in his gaze. For now, the group pressed on, focusing on the task at hand. Each step brought them closer to the transmitter, but also deeper into uncharted territory. The jungle grew denser, the air thicker with humidity. Strange noises echoed through the trees, keeping everyone on edge. On the fourth day, they reached the location marked on the map. The transmitter tower loomed above them, its skeletal frame barely holding together after years of neglect. Vines wrapped around its base and sections of the structure had collapsed entirely. Still, it was their best chance at contacting Earth. Laura and Rachel worked tirelessly to repair the damaged equipment, piecing together circuits and rerouting power supplies. Alex and Shadow kept watch, while Daniel and Ethan gathered materials to reinforce the unstable parts of the tower. Progress was slow but steady. Finally, after hours of effort, Laura activated the transmitter. A faint hum filled the air as the system powered up, sending a signal into the void. "It's working," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "We did it." But their celebration was short-lived. Moments later, the ground trembled violently and a deafening roar shook the jungle. From the shadows emerged a massive creature, unlike anything they had encountered before. Its body was covered in armored plates, and its jaws were lined with rows of jagged teeth. It locked eyes with Shadow, letting out another ear-splitting roar. Alex stepped forward, placing himself between the beast and the team. "Stay back," he ordered. "This is my fight." Shadow growled in response, standing shoulder to shoulder with Alex. Together they faced the monster, ready to defend their companions at any cost. The battle that followed was fierce and chaotic, testing the limits of their strength and resolve. When the dust settled, Alex and Shadow stood victorious, though battered and exhausted. The rest of the team watched in stunned silence, overwhelmed by the depth of their courage and loyalty. In that moment, there was no doubt, Alex and Shadow weren't just survivors. They were heroes. As night fell, the team gathered around the IO repaired transmitter, waiting anxiously for a response to their signal. Whether help would arrive remained uncertain, but one thing was clear. They had already found something invaluable, a bond forged in adversity, proving that even in the eyes yet harshest of worlds, humanity and loyalty could endure. The days following the activation of the transmitter were filled with both hope and uncertainty. The team took turns monitoring the equipment, listening intently for any sign of a response. Each static-filled silence felt heavier than the last, testing their patience and resolve. Laura adjusted the frequency settings repeatedly, her hands trembling as she worked. "It has to work," she muttered under her breath. "Someone out there has to hear us." Meanwhile, Alex and Shadow remained vigilant, keeping watch over the camp. The battle with the armored creature had left them both injured, though neither complained. Alex tended to Shadow's wounds with quiet determination, his movements methodical despite the fatigue etched into his face. Shadow, in turn, stayed close to Alex, his once bright eyes now dull but still alert. Their bond had been tested time and again, and yet it held firm, a testament to the trust they shared. Rachel spent much of her time observing the pair, her notebook filled with sketches and notes about their interactions. She couldn't help but marvel at how seamlessly they operated together, as if they were two halves of a single entity. "It's like they're more than just companions," she said to Daniel one evening. "They're connected on a deeper level." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "I've never seen anything like it. Most people would have given up by now, but Alex keeps going because of Shadow, and Shadow fights for Alex. It's remarkable." Ethan, however, remained skeptical. He sat apart from the group, sharpening his knife with deliberate strokes. "It's dangerous," he said abruptly, breaking the quiet. "That thing could turn on us at any moment. We're putting too much faith in an animal." His words hung in the air, met with silence. No one wanted to argue, not when tensions were already high. But the sentiment lingered, unspoken, yet understood. Even Ethan seemed to sense the weight of his own cynicism, lowering his gaze as he continued working. On the fifth day, just as dawn broke over the horizon, the transmitter crackled to life. A voice, faint but unmistakable, emerged from the speakers. "This is Captain Lewis of the rescue vessel Stellar Dawn. Do you copy?" Laura nearly dropped her tools in shock. "We copy," she shouted into the microphone, her voice cracking with emotion. "Repeat, we copy. Please confirm your position." After a brief exchange, the team learned that the Stellar Dawn was en route to their location, expected to arrive within 3 days. Relief washed over them, but it was tempered by the reality of their situation. They still had to survive until then, and the jungle showed no signs of easing its grip on them. As news of the impending rescue spread, the mood in the camp shifted. For the first time in weeks, laughter echoed through the trees. Laura joked about the first meal she'd eat, back on Earth, while Rachel described the comforts of a real bed. Even Ethan allowed himself a small smile, though he quickly masked it with a cough. But Alex remained distant, his expression unreadable. When Daniel approached him later that day, he found the man sitting alone, staring at Shadow. "You okay?" Daniel asked gently. Alex didn't answer right away. Instead, he ran a hand along Shadow's fur, his touch gentle but firm. "What happens now?" he finally said, his voice low. "They'll take me back to Earth, but what about Shadow? He can't come with us." Daniel hesitated, unsure of how to respond. The truth was, he didn't know. Regulations regarding off-world animals were strict, and bringing Shadow aboard the rescue ship would likely be impossible. Yet leaving the Predator behind felt equally unthinkable, not just for Alex, but for everyone who had witnessed the depth of their bond. "We'll figure something out," Daniel promised, though even he wasn't convinced. "There has to be a way." Over the next 2 days, the team prepared for the arrival of the Stellar Dawn, gathering supplies and securing the area around the transmitter. Alex and Shadow stayed close, their usual routine unchanged. But Alex's demeanor grew increasingly somber, as if he were bracing himself for something inevitable. On the morning of the 3rd day, the sound of engines roared overhead. The Stellar Dawn descended through the clouds, its sleek hull gleaming in the sunlight. The sight of the ship brought tears to Laura's eyes, and even Ethan let out a rare laugh. "Finally," he said, shaking his head. "We made it." As the rescue crew disembarked, Alex stood apart from the group, Shadow by his side. The Predator growled softly, clearly uneasy around the newcomers. One of the officers approached Alex cautiously, introducing himself as Lieutenant Grayson. "We're here to get you home," he said, extending a hand. Alex ignored the gesture, his focus entirely on Shadow. "What about him?" he asked pointedly. "He comes with me." Grayson frowned, glancing at the massive Predator. "I'm sorry, but that's not possible. Regulations prohibit—" "I'm not leaving without him," Alex interrupted, his tone firm. "He saved all of our lives. Without him, none of us would be standing here." The lieutenant exchanged a glance with Daniel, who stepped forward. "Sir, Alex is right. Shadow isn't just an animal. He's part of this team. There has to be some kind of exception." Grayson sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'll need to consult with command, but I can't make any promises." The hours that followed were agonizingly tense. While the rest of the team boarded the ship to receive medical attention and prepare for departure, Alex refused to leave Shadow's side. He sat cross-legged on the ground, speaking softly to the Predator as if trying to reassure him. Shadow rested his head on Alex's lap, his breathing slow and steady. Rachel visited them briefly, crouching beside Alex. "You did everything you could," she said softly. "Whatever happens, you gave Shadow a chance most Predators never get." Alex nodded, though his eyes remained fixed on Shadow. "He's family," he said simply. "Family doesn't leave each other behind." Eventually, Grayson returned with an update. After extensive discussions, command had agreed to allow Shadow aboard, but only under strict conditions. He would be sedated for the journey and placed in a reinforced containment unit designed for large animals. Once they reached Earth, further evaluations would determine his fate. It wasn't the ideal solution, but it was the best they could hope for. Alex accepted the terms without hesitation, staying by Shadow's side as the medical team administered the sedative. As the Predator drifted off to sleep, Alex whispered a promise. "I'll see you soon, buddy. Just hold on." With Shadow secured in the containment unit, Alex joined the others on the ship. The interior was sterile and unfamiliar, a stark contrast to the wild jungle they had called home for so long. Laura and Rachel tried to engage him in conversation, but Alex remained withdrawn, his thoughts clearly elsewhere. During the journey back to Earth, the team reflected on everything they had endured. They spoke of the battles they had fought, the discoveries they had made, and the bonds they had formed. But the conversation always circled back to Alex and Shadow. Their story was unlike anything anyone had ever seen, a testament to the power of trust and survival. When the Stellar Dawn finally docked at a space station orbiting Earth, officials were waiting to greet them. Shadow was immediately transferred to a specialized facility for observation, while Alex underwent debriefings and medical evaluations. Despite the separation, Alex remained resolute, visiting Shadow every day and ensuring the Predator received the best care possible. Weeks passed, and the evaluations concluded that Shadow posed no threat to humans as long as he remained with Alex. In a rare act of leniency, authorities granted Alex permission to keep Shadow, provided certain safety measures were followed. News of their reunion spread quickly, capturing the public's imagination. Stories circulated about a man and his feline companion roaming the uncharted reaches of the galaxy. Some dismissed it as legend, others embraced it as inspiration. But those who had been there knew the truth. For Alex and Shadow, life on Earth was strange and unfamiliar, but they faced it together, as they always had. Their bond had transcended worlds, proving that loyalty and love could endure even the harshest of circumstances. And though neither could fully understand the other's language, their connection needed no words. It was written in the scars they bore, the battles they had fought, and the promise they had kept. In the end, it wasn't mercy that bound them. It was something far stronger, something unbreakable,